It was a typical Tuesday morning when I arrived at work, ready to start my shift at the marketing firm I had been with for 3 years. I had always been dedicated to my job, working hard to prove myself. I had a great relationship with most of my colleagues, but my boss, Mr. Anderson, had a reputation for being difficult. He was the kind of person who made people feel small for voicing their opinions, especially if they didn't align with his. That day, I was just doing my usual work when I overheard a conversation between Mr. Anderson and a few senior staff members. They were discussing a proposal I had worked on the night before, and from the sounds of it, they were dismissing my ideas without even considering them. It was frustrating, to say the least. I had put in hours of effort, and here they were, tearing it apart without even a second thought. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I stood up from my desk, walked over to Mr. Brett Anderson's office, and knocked on the door. "Mr. Anderson," I started, my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. "I heard what was said about my proposal, and I think it deserves a better explanation." He looked at me, a slight smirk on his face. "This isn't the time for your little outbursts, Karen," he said, using the nickname he always gave me to belittle me. "You're not in charge here. Maybe you should stick to your work and let the experts handle the rest." I felt my blood boil. I wasn't one to cause trouble, but hearing him dismiss my hard work like that was too much. "I'm just asking for some respect, Mr. Anderson," I replied. "I worked hard on this, and I believe it has value." He scoffed and stood up from his desk. "I don't need some employee questioning my judgment," he snapped. "If you can't accept that, maybe you shouldn't be here." The words hit me like a slap in the face. I had never been one to back down easily, but his arrogance was overwhelming. I wasn't going to let him think he could get away with this. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "But maybe you should rethink how you treat your employees." He was taken aback for a moment, then waved me off. "You're fired, Karen," he said dismissively, his tone cold. I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach, and for a moment I couldn't believe what I had just heard. I had been with this company for years, working my way up from an intern to a valued team member. And now, just like that, I was being fired over a simple disagreement? I didn't say anything else. I grabbed my things and walked out, my mind racing with a mixture of frustration, humiliation, and disbelief. The next morning, as I was preparing to head to my car, I got a call from my husband, Ethan. Ethan had been a successful entrepreneur for years, and unbeknownst to Mr. Anderson, he was also one of the company's biggest investors. I had never told anyone at work about my personal life, my relationship with Ethan, our history, or the fact that he had been quietly supporting the firm for years. Ethan's voice was calm but serious on the other end of the line. "Karen," he said, "I just got a call from the board. They said Mr. Anderson fired you, and I'm not happy about it." I felt my chest tighten. "I'm so sorry, Ethan," I said, my voice shaky. "I didn't want you to have to get involved, but it was just too much. He humiliated me, and I had to stand up for myself." There was a brief silence before Ethan spoke again, his tone much more stern. "Karen, I'm not mad at you, but you need to know something. Mr. Anderson has no idea who he's messing with. I'm the one who's been backing this company. I'm the one who's been making sure they stay afloat. If he thinks he can treat you like that, he's about to learn a very important lesson." I didn't fully understand what he meant until later that afternoon. Ethan called me again and told me that he had spoken with the board of directors and made it clear that Mr. Anderson's behavior would not be tolerated. He also informed them that, effective immediately, he was pulling his investments from the company. By the end of the day, Mr. Anderson's arrogance had caught up with him. He was called into a meeting with the board, and to his surprise, they informed him that his actions had not only cost him his position, but had also resulted in a massive loss of investor confidence. His rude, racist attitude had finally backfired. The next morning, Mr. Anderson's office was empty. He was gone, just like that. I was called back into the office, but not as a fired employee. Instead, I was asked to stay on, with the company offering me a promotion and an apology for what had happened. When I walked into the boardroom, I couldn't help but smile. The company's new leadership was far more respectful, and they treated their employees like real people, not just cogs in a machine. As for Mr. Anderson, he was never seen or heard from again. It was a tough lesson for him, but a lesson nonetheless. I learned something that day as well. Standing up for yourself is never easy, especially when you're dealing with people in power who think they can get away with anything. But sometimes, it's not about being loud or combative, it's about having the strength to walk away when they treat you wrong. And sometimes, the people you least expect to come through for you are the ones who stand by you when you need it the most. Ethan and I never wanted our relationship to be used as a way to get back at anyone, but it was comforting to know that, in the end, justice was served. Mr. Anderson's downfall was a reminder that no matter how much power someone thinks they have, their actions always have consequences.